Hi, this is Vince Leo. I am the film critic for the website Quipster.net. I'd like to thank you for joining me on the Quipster Film Review Podcast. This is where I review all of the latest in film releases, whether it's in the theater, on VOD, or sometimes even coming straight to television. Generally, I cover only new releases, but if you want to get any of my takes on any film, you can go to my website. I have over 3,800 film reviews, and you can read them all at Quipster.net, QWIPSTER.net. I'm looking at Green Room. It's the latest film by Jeremy Saulnier, who is the director and screenwriter. It is a thriller/horror movie. It's rated R because of some very strong, brutal graphic violence, gory images, language, and some drug content. The runtime is 1 hour and 35 minutes, and the cast includes Anton Yelchin, Patrick Stewart, Imogen Poots, Joe Cole, Aaliyah Shawkat, Callum Turner, Mark Webber, Macon Blair, and Eric Edelstein. The film is about a DC-based punk quartet who are touring the American Northwest. They are known as the Ain't Rights, and they haven't really taken this part of the country by storm. They end up taking a bit of a detour from their tour to secure some much-needed gas money for the cross-country trip home. They end up playing in a backwoods Oregon roadhouse for some skinhead neo-Nazis. They don't agree with the neo-Nazi ways, but they need the money. After the gig, they stumble into a room backstage and discover that there is a young woman who has been murdered on the floor. The skinheads, who are culpable, aren't going to just let them walk out after they've alerted the police, and that brings in Darcy, the dive club's owner. Darcy wants to keep all traces of their illegal activities and other activities away from the prying eyes of the authorities, so they end up staging a cover-up story while the Ain't Rights are locked tight in the green room. Knowing that things are probably not going to end very well for them, it's up to the band to try to figure out a way out of this situation before they end up being the next victims in that room. Jeremy Saulnier follows up his cult indie thriller called Blue Ruin. It became a big hit at Cannes and also on Netflix, where many people discovered it. This is another surefire cult thriller in his filmography. It's tinged with horror elements, and it seeks to show what happens when genre musicians who explore a counterculture form of art actually confront the most extreme of their listeners who find a lot of empowerment in the hardcore music that they play. Saulnier gives us just enough character development among the band to sympathize with their plight, as well as to get us to boo and hiss at the vile neo-Nazis that they find themselves surrounded by. So good job by Saulnier to finding an unsympathetic villain and to allow us to make connections with a punk band, which you don't generally get to do in films. Tension and confusion are established almost immediately once this dead body is discovered, and it only escalates in that tension from there. It's not entirely playing out in a manner that escape horror thrillers tend to in terms of the formula, and that aspect leaves many scenes with a kind of palpable edge that keeps you as the audience member reeled into the immediacy of the terrifying situation at hand. It does sport a non-romanticized authenticity into this subculture of the underbelly of America, and that's impressively brought out within Saulnier's film. It captures the look, the style, the attitudes, the connection to the music in the punk scene that's rare in a prominent big screen release, because Hollywood has tended to relegate most punk fans and punkers as misfits or perhaps even perpetrators of disdain and maybe even violence at times, unprovoked usually. Green Room is starkly photographed to accentuate the grays of the wardrobe as well as the green of the Oregon surroundings. The cinematography from Sean Porter is as equally effective in evoking the sickening mood as Saulnier's tight direction. This is a very claustrophobic siege flick. It's a definite visceral homage to the kinds of horror classics of yesteryear, the kinds of siege films you would find in the 1970s especially. Perhaps no surprise that a lot of the punk rock that's in this film are evocative of that mid to late 70s era of music. There's a fine cast of actors here. They all play very believably within the specific moments. There's an impressive performance here as the main baddie by Patrick Stewart. He's cast completely against type, even though he's played a bad guy before in such films as Conspiracy Theory. But this one he really nails as this slithering leader of this most unsavory community of disaffected fascist use. I have to emphasize this point. Green Room is definitely not going to be to every taste. This is a film that is very grisly and very graphic in its depiction of violence. You have machetes come out, you have lethal attack dogs. It does not flinch from showing you the worst of it. And I think that that will cause all but the most hardened of gore hounds to avert their eyes from the screen during a few viciously presented moments. The moments come often completely by surprise. This is not the kind of thriller horror film in which you can see when these things are going to come. If you're somebody who is very sensitive to seeing on-screen displays of some very graphic violence, I would say that this is not going to be the movie for you. Even though it's a well-made film, some people are just not going to be able to take very much of it. This is a very bleak and disturbingly uneasy experience for a lot of people. But if you're somebody who can take that, if you happen to be inured to the kinds of displays of violence, maybe you don't exactly enjoy seeing a lot of grisly violence, but you will tolerate it if the film earns the right to be able to show that to you, to show you the horror of it, then I think that The Green Room is done with consummate skill. It's too riveting to stop watching even when it seems too hard to stomach the escalating sense of dread and the stench of death and violence in the air. Still flying under the radar, at least for now, Saulnier continues to be an auteur worth looking out for. He said he made this film because he knew that he was going to be doing more big-budget Hollywood films in the future, so this was the right time for this film because this is the kind of movie that wouldn't have been given to somebody who was completely green, so to speak, as he used to be, but also not the kind of movie that Hollywood is going to put a lot of funding into, so he felt that the time was now to get this film out. And certainly it does bear out quite well for him. So Green Room, I'm giving 3.5 stars out of 4 for those people who like horror thrillers. This is one of the better examples of the genre. And I think that a lot of people will, as long as they can stomach the violence, will come out of this film thinking that it was a well-made film and very effective in its harrowing aspects. 3.5 stars on my scale means that I do feel that this is a good film, and I do think that it's worth going out of your way for if this is your kind of movie. This is not the kind of movie that I would recommend to just anybody. My mom's not getting a recommendation. I'm not recommending it to my girlfriend. I'm not recommending it to my coworkers. This is strictly for people who love violent thrillers. Thanks everyone for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the review. If you want to find my contact information, you can go to my website. Quipster.net is where to go. QWIPSTER.net. Until next time, I hope that you enjoy your time anytime you get to go to the movies.